Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So this will be part 2 of the video series that I'm making. And so in the last part I talked about success, and in this part I'll be talking about depression. Now, if any of you are suffering truly from clinical depression and you're at a point where you really feel like you can't function in your day-to-day lives, then please do seek professional help. I'm not a mental health professional, so my advice is it's more of I guess, my take on how I have interpreted everything that I've read or what I've heard from people, but it is in no way certified or professional. So if you are truly suffering from clinical depression or a severity of depression where you feel like you can't function, then please do seek professional help. So with depression, I guess there are many levels of it, obviously, but it is typically known as a persistent depressed mood or loss of interest in activity, and this can obviously cause a loss of ability to even properly function in your day-to-day life. And I think from the cases I've read about and the people that I've seen suffer from depression, I can safely say that there is no prerequisite for depression. It can happen to anyone, unfortunately. And I think sometimes there is a stigma of, oh, you have to be like financially broke, or, you have to have no relationships in your life or any of that kind of stuff to be depressed. And that is completely not true. As we've seen, many successful people that seem to have it all have been depressed and have committed suicide. Of course, the one example that I'm going to allude to is going to be the Sushant Singh Rajput case of, his suicide. And of course, we've seen it over the past couple of years with Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain, just to name a few. And I just want to talk about two actresses who have kind of addressed this topic of depression and mental health. One of them being Deepika who she has been open about her struggles with clinical depression. And she said that it came to her at a time where everyone basically thought that she was at the top of her game, and she truly was at the top of her game according to what everyone was seeing. She was starting to make a name for herself professionally in the industry. Everyone was starting to take her seriously as an actress, and she, was in a very successful and happy relationship. And, besides those two facts of her being talented and her being in that very successful relationship, she, obviously is drop dead gorgeous, and, a lot of women aspire to be like her. So how can someone who's like a role model for all these people, how could she be suffering from depression when it seemed like she had it all? And she still has, she's still very successful. And she was talking about it, and she said, I just felt this very pittish feeling in my stomach, and I didn't know what it was. And she sought the help for it, fortunately. And in one interview, she was talking about how, as you get to the top, you start feeling lonely. And she was talking about how she was starting to lose friends, lose relationships, and it did make her feel lonely. And she said that when, it's kind of sometimes it feels like this battle, like you have to choose between, do I want to be successful, or do I want to, it feels like you have to compromise. And I truly feel like, everything has a level of compromise to it. But there's a difference between compromising and then completely losing your identity. And I'm not going to lie, as we get busier in our lives, as we, start making progress in our lives, we will have to face that sometimes. Sometimes we will lose friends, we will lose relationships. And it doesn't mean that those friendships or relationships weren't valid at all. It just means that either that person doesn't support you in your goal anymore, or they don't understand that even if you're trying to make time for them, maybe it's not as much time as you would be able to make for them. And so their interests, kind of separate from your interests, and you guys just kind of separate paths in life. And then, of course, there will be people that will understand, your success and will be truly happy for your success. And even though you guys might not talk to each other every day or as often as you did, there will still be that bond there. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And then I'm also going to talk about the actress Kangana Ranaut. I have talked about her, I think, a couple of times before on my channel, but I also very much admire her. I admire her story. I admire her courage. I admire her, fearlessness of speaking up against an industry that many, many people are terrified of. And she was talking about how, she always felt like an outsider in the industry, and she said that never, that used to bother me a little bit, but it doesn't really bother me anymore, and she's very successful. But she said that, when I came into the industry, I had very broken English. I didn't have the so-called dialect that directors were looking for, and she said I was mocked a lot of times by directors and, producers for my English. And it's not even her English that was a problem sometimes. It was even her hair sometimes. And this is a problem with, I think still a problem within the Bollywood industry is, the image of an actor and actress. There seems to be a certain image that everyone's always looking for, whether it's tall, thin, light skin, straight hair. And that is starting to get better, but it's definitely still there. And she said at the time, she's like, while I had the height and the figure and the skin tone that directors were looking for, I didn't have the hair. She has naturally very coarse, thick hair. And she said a lot of directors didn't want to work with me because of my hair. And she said, obviously, I thought that was so ridiculous. Given that she said she's from a theater background, so she didn't get into the industry just based off of her looks. She had the talent to back it up, but she still wasn't getting offers. And then she's like, I started being typecast into roles. I started playing all the neurotic characters because that's all directors thought I could do. And she said I had to kind of, I had to work very hard to break myself from that, typecast that was put on me. And she said, during that time, still I had feelings of being an outsider, but it didn't really affect me. It started not to affect me when I started getting recognized for my talent. And I think that might have been a reason why Sushant started to feel so isolated, is because even though he had the talent, I don't think people were acknowledging it properly. And so even though he very much was a part of the industry and contributed so much to the industry, he probably still very much felt like an outsider. And in terms of fame and being a celebrity, I feel like part of that, even though you don't sign a contract, it's kind of, you're signing away a little bit your private life to the media. And I feel like when your every move is scrutinized and treated as public property, you are under this constant pressure to do no wrong and to seem like you have it all together all the time, which no one does all the time. That's part of the human condition. Frustration, sadness, that's part of being human. And I think in a way, when celebrities are under this pressure to constantly show that they are, happy and successful, it starts making the general person feel like they have to feel that way all the time too. And I think sometimes that is also what contributes to depression and anxiety. And we always, I think, are starting to feel like we have to have everything together all the time, and if we don't, we're not in the right direction, we're failing at life, we're failing at everything. And of course that leads to that feeling of failure. And as part of the feeling of failure, I don't think that, obviously there are going to be points in your life where you're at a low point and you need to build yourself up from it, but just because you're at that low point, it doesn't mean that it's all over. And I think sometimes certain communities continue to perpetuate that, if you are suffering through something mentally, it's not legit. And from my personal experience being a South Asian and growing up in a South Asian community, I found that, while this community is getting better at acknowledging that mental health is an issue and we need to talk about it, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. And I feel like the proper conversation is being had in terms of celebrities and, certain industries. But when it comes to the day-to-day person's life, certain communities aren't still having that conversation with their children, with their parents, with their spouses. And it's harmful, because then I feel like people start to think when someone comes to them or confides in them that I have this problem, I have depression, I'm trying to seek help for it, people start to say, oh, it's just a phase, or it's not legit, it's a waste of time, this isn't going to help, seeing a therapist isn't going to help. And they never have a true conversation about it. They just try to in their minds, and I'm not saying that, it's because they don't want to help their friends or whoever's confiding in them. It's just that they've also grown up with this idea that, okay, it's just a phase, and no one's really taking the time to educate themselves on it or have a truly open conversation on it. And I think part of that stems from the fact that we have to always seem like we have it together all the time. And if we don't, it's like, okay, well then just get a new job or get another degree or find another spouse and everything will be fixed. Like, no. That void that you're feeling isn't magically going to be fixed by so-called material things. You have to dig deeper into it and figure out what it is. And might it be related to one of those things? Yes. Maybe your job is making you unhappy and you haven't realized it, and then you realize, okay, I need to do that for myself. But you need to do it because you truly feel like you need to pursue a different path in life, not because everyone else is telling you, once you do this, it's the one-way solution to all of your problems. And then I personally also think there is a little bit of a stigma still between men versus women seeking help for mental illnesses. And I say this because I think, it's still very well known that, women typically maybe suffer from depression more than men do. So if they seek help for it, it's kind of like, oh, okay, well, I was expecting this, or it's great that you are seeking help for it. But then when a guy starts to do so, sometimes I think it's like, oh, well, you're a man, you should know how to handle your emotions, or maybe even that you shouldn't have emotions. Like, you should just be stone-faced, and you need to deal with it. Like, this is a feminine problem to deal with. This isn't something that you're supposed to deal with. And that is a very toxic mindset. I think that in terms of anything, not even just mental health, but even physical health, like, why are we looking at it in terms of men versus women? Why does one expected to suffer more than the other? And when the gender that isn't shown or expected to suffer more, when they seek help, why is it ridiculed sometimes? We need to see everybody as human. It's part of the human condition to have suffering sometimes, to go through a rough patch sometimes. And if we don't accept that, this is how we get to this point of, us not seeing when someone is, giving us a cry for help and not taking the actions needed to help them. And so with that, yeah, we're all obviously human. We're all vulnerable to the human condition, but that doesn't mean we are weak. It just means that we need to acknowledge that we have these phases in our life, or we are going to have maybe this uncertainty or this unsettling part of us. But if we accept that and take the steps to do something about it, that's where we can grow from that. And that is also part of the human condition, growing. Just because you find yourself suffering from depression or suffering from anxiety, if you realize that and you take the steps needed, you seek the help you need, that is part of growing too. It doesn't make you any less of a person to ask for help, whether you're a guy or a girl. We're all human. We all need help, and there's nothing wrong with asking for it. And so part of asking for help is also, I think, normalizing the conversation around mental illness. And I think once we start normalizing the conversation more, we will have a better support system. And I think, we have definitely made strides in mental health. It's definitely better than it was years and years ago. And I think the conversation is becoming more normalized, which I truly appreciate. But there is still a lot more work that needs to be done. As we can see, it hasn't completely gotten to where it is. We're still having these issues of suicide and people feeling so unsatisfied and feeling nervous about asking for help. And so this conversation needs to be continued. And this is a reason why I personally feel like I should speak up on things and talk about these things, because maybe I'm just one person in the vast amount of people that are doing things to help this movement, but any voice is better than no voice. And my goal here is just to, again, continue the conversation, to continue to help normalize it, because we're all in this together. We are not alone in this. And I think the moment we start feeling like we're alone in it is when we delve into this dark hole of, just closing ourselves off and not asking for help. And last but not least, I just want to close this video by saying that we don't need to be perfect. Part of the human condition isn't perfection. That's not part of the human condition. Yes, we need to keep improving ourselves, but we don't need to be perfect. We just need to acknowledge all the facets of ourselves in our lives, accept them, and take the steps needed to live a life where we are in homeostasis. And we acknowledge that, yeah, I might be angry sometimes, I might be frustrated sometimes, I might feel sad sometimes, but that doesn't mean that I'm a failure of a person or I won't ever have happiness or success. It just means that I acknowledge this now and I'm going to seek the steps needed to help myself. And yeah, just we don't need to beat ourselves up for being human. We don't need to beat ourselves up for feeling lost or feeling like we need help. We just need to take the steps. And part of taking the steps is we need to have compassion for each other. That is very important. You know, we all live different lives and we don't know what someone is going through. And this is part of the problem with depression as well. We start to think that this person shouldn't be having depression, they have it all, or we start to think that, oh, this person doesn't have, you know, a spouse or this kind of a job or this kind of a house, so they need to be depressed when they might be completely happy in their life. So we need to stop associating certain conditions with, you know, oh, this person should be depressed or this person shouldn't be depressed. Like I said, at the end of the day, we're all human. We're all subject to the same things, no matter what social status we have, no matter what kind of job we have, no matter where we come from. We're all human at the end of the day, and we're all equal at the end of the day. And we need to have compassion for each other and start treating each other that way. So I hope this message resonated with you guys, helped you guys, and if you think it could help anyone else, then please do share this video, please like this video, and please do subscribe. The last part of my video I'll be posting will be the third part, the final and last part, and yeah, hopefully it'll also help you guys. I hope you guys are taking care of yourselves and have a wonderful day.